And as we look at matters relating to inheritance, survival of those left behind by, their late family members and others, it is very, very important for you to actually take a listen to this particular scenario and just brace up because at some point it may want to pump the emotions within you. But this is as we have some report that a man in Owerri has actually been accused of demolishing and allegedly disposing of the only property left behind by his late elder brother, leaving the widow and her children without a shelter. And while raising the alarm for the public to be aware, this is exactly what transpired. I'm tempted to actually address you with the other appellation this morning.
Which other appellation?
The one concerning what you would want to say on this.
Well, if there's a thing to be said on this, Ade, it's very
Legally
clear.
speaking.
Legally speaking. That's what you're running around to land on. Now, this is an example of what plays out within the wider society, even today, where widows are dispossessed of their property rights at the demise of their husbands. Now, this is going to be a two-way for me. First off, it's meant to educate those out there on the fact that these things happen, and then secondly, to call the attention of relevant authorities to instances where they happen. Now, from that video, the lady in question, a widow, Mrs. Chinyere, she had her home demolished at night by thugs alleged to be hired by her late husband's brother, and she had a son. Because at first hearing, you might think this woman maybe had no child or had just girls, which is what a lot of communities hinge on to dispossess widows. But she had a son, all right? And then, for whatever reason, because we've not heard from the late husband's brother, who is the accused in this instance, okay, so we would not want to judge him in his absence, but for whatever reason.
But what about the presence of multiple witnesses? And when we talk about talks, in fact, from what you see in that particular video, it shows that the building was not brought down by, just mere hands.
No, it was machines.
It was machines. So that was something, way more sophisticated and planned by somebody who had the means to actually do so.
But there are a lot of what ifs at this point.
Which is?
What if, number one, what if there was an order of court that was the basis for that demolition? You and I seated here right now do not know. Besides, we have not gotten any extras to, the grounds on which this young man, if he is the one, did what was done, right? Now, assuming but not conceding this was because the cries there, as all the stories in print, suggest that he did this in exercise of his powers as the first son of the husband, the late husband's family.
But there's no law in the land that recognizes such arrangements.
Which arrangement?
talking about the power as the first son of the late husband.
That brings us to where I was just trying to get to. Ade, you know there is custom, right? And then there is the law as we know it.
Mm-hmm.
And like I mentioned last week on one of our segments, there's the repugnancy test. Now, what does the repugnancy test provide? That any law or custom, any custom that's inconsistent with what we know as the common law today, right, or our codified rules of constitution, is to the extent of its inconsistency null and void. In other words, if it does not speak well for justice, equity, good conscience, it's no law. It cannot be held as binding. All right. Now, traditionally, the community they come from may have upheld and accepted that once a man dies, the man's property devolves to his brothers. It is not uncommon in this part of the world for such practices to be, upheld and followed by a lot of, traditional believers and those who practice same. Now, where they seem to be losing it is the fact that times have changed. The laws that govern the country, much as in some instances they appear very weak, which is why I've many times shy away from talking about these things, the laws that govern this country provide that upon the death of a woman's husband, his property does not devolve to his family members.
By his family members' extension, not the
My
ones
brother,
he gave birth
yes,
to.
not the ones given to the extended family members. Members of his household are those that have first cover.
Especially the children.
Even under the administration of estate law of various states, it is the man's household, his immediate household, that has first right of inheritance. And where they perhaps do not survive him, then you can now begin to look at the siblings. And also mark clear that this is where you have a man who dies intestate. Now, someone dies intestate where the person died without a will.
Okay.
Right? So when you die without a will, you have to now apply to the probate registry. That's the person who survived the deceased, being the widow now, has to write to the probate registry to say, oh, my husband is late, died without a will, and I will need letters of administration over his estate, or you could administer. Now, these are procedural. Now, where does the problem lie in this scenario? The fact that this unfortunate widow may not have been seized or may not have had knowledge of the laws that protect her. And these things happen not just in Imo State, but in a lot of other states where widows are not aware.
I would rather also add that this is laced with so much wickedness, because we are dealing with a very temptatious situation where a lot of people have thrown morals to the wind. If we take a look at that building, it's not one of those what they will call buildings that are not properly constructed. Just take a look at some of the rubbles that dropped from there. It shows that it's some sort of properly built facility.
Mm-hmm.
Now, coming down.
Sorry, sir.
Okay.
Would it have been justified if it was a shanty? Because you talk.
No. I'm also trying to qualify the extent of the damage that has been incurred, because I do not see the rationale why the only thing, or maybe the last thing that anyone could think about in actually fighting over this property was to bring down the facility. And it actually also means, like you mentioned, that there are some customer laws that may be enabling these persons that have been alleged to carry out this act. Because right now, it means that the widow of the deceased does not have anywhere to go to. Even if there is something relating to a payment that need to be offset, I mean, putting them out in the cold without shelter is not the best way to go. We have seen widows subjected to very wicked practices in the African context and maybe in Nigeria until some reviews are being done. So I don't understand why when a man passes, it almost looks as if the widow does not have a place. When the man is alive, some of the things he showed us, some of the responsibility they have, you don't get to have some of these family members or people who claim to now want to have ownership over those properties come out and challenge the person to the extent where it will become a full-blown discussion. They don't come out. They wait for the man to pass and they begin to lay claims to many things. So it's pure act of wickedness, whether it's in Imo State, whether it's in River State. I mean, we've had cases of that nature here as well. And it doesn't look as if it will stop anytime. There should be some level of deterrent to people who carry out these things. I've always maintained that it is quite easier to destroy than it is to build. So why would you actually put up that target? You know, I have a very close situation that is close to home, and I can tell you for a fact that there's nothing relating to this person is owing that person. There's nothing relating to this person should have right over it. But that same structure was actually demolished. And when they were about to do the sale of the land, it was sold at a way less value.
Where were the family members? You know, I don't believe that if you give out your daughter's hand in marriage, you turn your back on her. Right?
That's another thing.
Where were the family members of the instance you mentioned now? You watched the property demolished. You also watched it get sold. Excuse you. So does that mean you don't have links to any lawyers? Does that mean you don't listen to WAVE FM at least the grand jury every Wednesday by 11:30? Does that mean you do not have any form of exposure? These are the things, and that's why I even wonder when people sit down in their community meetings, what do they discuss?
You know, again,
what do they share?
There's another part to it where you are subjected or made to become submissive by some traditional thinking of, oh, don't worry, God will solve this, that will fight your battle, and before you know it, some people just let it go.
Again, it brings us back to the issue of proper enlightenment and education, right? If you keep yourself a slave to traditional hobbies and you have nothing that shines the light on the darkness that you're walking into, it's just like GBV, right? Now, these are things that you see and you know that this thing is wrong. But beyond knowing is understanding that there's a framework that criminalizes same. If after the demolition, they just finish the cry, oh, human rights, oh, this, and you do not have that boldness to walk into the office of a lawyer and discuss this thing through. See, you're just as good as making noise. Do you know how many real estate related cases, land related cases, property right cases have been won, at least in the last one calendar year? Many of them are cases that had to do with devolution from a deceased husband. And this would also be a word of advice to the husbands out there. Yes, I understand. People will tell you that if you want to get married under the Act, it's risky. Because if you ever want to head out, it's expensive. I understand.
Is that the registry thing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's called marriage under the Act. Now, let me also advise our husbands and our fathers out there. If you truly do love your wife, and you care about what happens to herself and your offspring after your eyes close one last time, the best you can do is to get married under the Act.
Can that be done post initial arrangement? Say maybe some couples have been married for 5-6 years,
Yes.
they can still go.
You can go back and do
Because
and let me tell you another error. Now, some persons do not understand that when you get married in a registered place of worship, recognized place of worship, that document you sign, that certificate you sign, is the same thing as what you have when you get to the registry. Many couples do not know.
Oh, really?
Until the chips are down. Yes.
I thought that one that is in church is the one
Registered
that was blessed.
and recognized place of worship, because not all.
Oh, okay.
Not all are.
Okay.
Do you
Not where they flog people.
No, not where they flog people. So there's that difference. So yes, if you've stayed a while and you want to go formalize, why not walk into the registry?
You know, I was talking with somebody, and he is very young. He's about to go into this marriage thing,
Yeah.
and he says the reason why he's scared of getting married under the Act is because he now feels that some women have turned that into a conversion means where after some time they will just say, well, I'm not doing it again, I have this sex with you, let's split, and before you know it, wahala comes.
Well, you have to walk into what you're walking to with wisdom. And when you say let's split, it's not automatic. There are considerations that the law has before any split is done.
Oh,
For instance, was this person fully dependent on you? Do you have any offspring to say, oh, we need to take care of custody and then provide for basic monthly upkeep? All those things are considerations. So it's not automatic for anybody who is assisting anybody. It's not automatic that you get a split.
Okay.
You get that? So, but back to what it is here, anybody who is on the basis of the fact that, in fact, the case of OKJ versus OKJ 2014, as held by the Supreme Court, was very clear on this one. That you cannot, by virtue of someone's gender, dispossess the person of the person's clear property rights. It doesn't work. But like I would say again, do not just sit down and do nothing. talk to a lawyer. If you're a widow listening this morning, or you know any widow out there who has got property that belonged to her late husband,
being dragged,
that's being dragged by his brothers under any custom whatsoever, rather than just sit down and this is where it gets twisted, Adi. Now, I have had instances